ideological subversion, or active measures, активные мероприятия in the language of the KGB, or psychological warfare. What it basically means is to change the perception of reality of every American to such an extent that despite of the abundance of information, no one is able to come to sensible conclusions in the interests of defending themselves, their families, their community, and their country. It's a great brainwashing process which goes very slow, and it's divided in 4 basic stages. The first one being demoralization. It takes from 15 to 20 years to demoralize a nation.
To demoralize a society is to attack a stable moral structure of conscience. To do so is to use a method which aims in destroying the conscience of every man and woman. A system of disorder which wipes the existence of human conscience and relinquishes the individual from any kind of teaching towards responsible action, duty and order that is to keep a society functionable. Therefore, the individual loses any sense of guided moral principle to support the structure of any given society, and in so doing, loses sight of care and understanding of what might be good and bad developments in law and order. When continued with this method over time, the people within society are likely to fall into a confused state of moral vulnerability. This may inevitably lead the masses into psychological conformity due to the fact that any foundation of previous moral law in society has been slowly conditioned into a malignant profanity of comedy and unimportance. Thus, what else could possibly be used by the people as a guiding principle? None other than the state, a system which over time has made its people vulnerable and indecisive through demoralization, a state which now has the ability to inject ideology of their intent whereby no compass is usable to make sense of direction. You may ask, what type of method is useful for societal demoralization? The use of Satanism can be one, to enforce and continue the death of Christian morality, which in so doing fundamentally confuses the existence of conscience itself. This may lead the individual vulnerable to accepting the potentials of a new agenda and ideology without realizing or caring of its effects due to their lack of conscience. For morality to become benign and insignificant for the individual. It may not be that Satanism be the goal of the subversion, but instead for it to be used as a tool to soften the minds of many against the importance of morality, so that new ideology can pass into existence and into society and civilization without public friction. Demoralization can also be the prerequisite to perpetual ignorance, that truth and evidence won't matter. Thus, with no moral compass and a rise in ignorance as an outcome, ideological possession embedded within the selfishness of narcissism can also be another outcome of demoralization. But through toxic narcissism, ideology becomes freedom of expression, leading to what will then be cultural destabilization.
Without being challenged or counterbalanced by the basic values of Americanism, American patriotism. The result you can see. Most of the people who graduated in the 60s, dropouts or half-baked intellectuals, are now occupying the positions of power in the government, civil service, business, mass media, educational system. You are stuck with them. You cannot get rid of them. They are contaminated. They are programmed to think and react to certain stimuli in a certain pattern. You cannot change their mind, even if you expose them to authentic information, even if you prove that white is white and black is black. You still cannot change the basic perception and the logic of behavior. In other words, these people the process of demoralization is complete and irreversible. Most of it is done by Americans to Americans, thanks to lack of moral standards. As I mentioned before, exposure to true information does not matter anymore. A person who was demoralized is unable to assess true information. The facts tell nothing to him. Even if I shower him with information, with authentic proof, with documents, with pictures, even if I take him by force to the Soviet Union and show him concentration camp, he will refuse to believe it until he is going to receive a kick in his fat bottom. When a military boot crashes his, then he will understand, but not before that. That's the tragic of the situation of demoralization. So basically America is stuck with demoralization, and unless, even if you start right now, here, this minute, you start educating new generation of Americans, it will still take you 15 to 20 years to turn the tide of ideological perception of reality back to normalcy and patriotism.
2. Destabilization from the inside out. Let's give a really relevant example. Governmental response to the pandemic has completely destabilized the economy, and this is to be done for the latter stages of normalization, so that the subverters can bring about the new ideology or new normal as intended. The founder of the World Economic Forum, Klaus Schwab, said the following, for example: "The pandemic represents a rare but narrow window of opportunity to reflect, reimagine, and reset our world." End quote. Yet these people who will be reflecting, reimagining and resetting our world won't be doing it with our best intentions at hand, because, well, most people have probably never heard of this forum since they popped their heads out of the sand during the pandemic, and they are certainly not an outcome of democratic choice, but are instead a group that intend on building what you could call a new world order, whereby they used and are still using Ordo ab Chao through the pandemic to quicken the process of resetting the economy, defence systems and finance relations for the attempted completion by 2030. Thus, the next few stages of crisis and normalisation go hand in hand with each other, because the aspect of normalisation is always indefinite. Nothing is truly normalised due to the drastic change that has occurred and been made from the crisis at hand. For example, you may have heard of the consistent propagandic phrase such as "going back to normal." It is a deceit, lie and illusion, of course, because you won't be going back to normal. How long do I have to wear a mask until things go back to normal? We must all get vaccines to go back to normal. Now you need a vaccine passport to go back to normal. We have now made immunobands, which we might start using for you to go back to normal. You see the trend? The crisis is always used to make normalization indefinite, and thus in return, they try to use the crisis as a continuous justifier to make additions continuously to the prolonging of the indefinite normalization, which is how you create basically the so-called new normal. A promise to return is necessary to keep you hopeful, but out of desperation, you jump through the hoops of authoritarian change to get back to the future, which, when in entry, has no indication of what you did call home.
The time bomb is ticking. With every second, the disaster is coming closer and closer. Unlike myself, you will have nowhere to defect to. There must be a very strong national effort to educate people in the spirit of real patriotism, number one. Number two, to explain them the real danger of socialist, communist, whatever, welfare state, big brother government. If people will fail to grasp the impending danger of that development, nothing ever can help United States. You may kiss goodbye to your freedom, including freedoms to homosexuals, to prison inmate, all this freedom will vanish, evaporate in 5 seconds, including your precious lives.